From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
How goes it?
If you've got a tip you'd like Melissa to talk about, an unsolved murder, a true crime story you find fascinating, how to convince the pharmacist that you really don't need those stupid child-proof caps on your prescription bottles, anything, tell us about it by calling the Tip-Ster Hotline at 832-TIPSTER or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now, here's your host. She's our Sherlock, and we're all merely her Watson, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. Oh, how I wish I could perfect my British accent and sound like Basil Rathbone in a Sherlock Holmes movie. But you are so much more than a Watson. You're my Moriarty.
Oh, no. Now, do you know anything about the Conan Doyle series, the Sherlock Holmes series?
Zip, zilch, nada, don't care.
Okay, well, then you probably... you're excused for not knowing that Professor Moriarty is he's genius, so I guess I should take that part of it as a compliment.
All right, okay.
But he's Holmes' arch enemy.
Yeah. You're my genius arch enemy, fucker. I know who you are. I don't have to watch some goddamn old black and white movie to know who you are.
Okay.
I got my finger on the pulse, buddy. Yeah. You're my little Moriarty.
All right.
Professor Moriarty, I think, right? He was a professor of some sort?
We go tumbling off the cliffs together and die together.
Well, that's how I've planned it.
Well, no, they both come back. They both end up coming.
Okay, all right.
Or Holmes does anyway.
Oh, all right. Well, that's how I've planned it.
Yeah, okay. Have you?
No, I have planned nothing. You know me. No, actually, I plan everything because I have a horrible amount of OCD, like a lot of serial killers, I think, probably a lot of OCD. But I have not killed anyone. The day is young, though.
I choose not to think about that aspect of your personality.
Don't get on my bad side. All I'm saying. No
worries about
I would
that.
never. I pick bugs up from the house and put them outside because the thought of killing them actually makes me cry. And it could be a bug that would potentially sting me, bite me, and kill me. And I'm still like, oh, you poor little thing. I got to take you outside. I'm a complete thin-skinned squish monster.
I know.
But you're still my Professor Moriarty. And thank you for bringing up the long national nightmare of those motherfucking prescription bottles with the childproof caps. Because I tell the people at Walgreens all the time, we don't have no kids. And our dogs don't have opposable thumbs.
Yeah.
So can it just have a regular old lid you just pop off so I don't have to tear the flesh from my palm, fuckers?
The answer is no.
Yeah, I know.
And I have CV. I use CVS, as you may know. And it's,
yes, we have dueling pharmacies.
It's even worse at CVS because CVS, not only do they just put the childproof caps on, which just hurt my hand like you, but they give me prescriptions that I didn't order.
That's good.
They decide that
the automatic refill.
Yeah,
Why don't we just call this podcast Two Old People Bitchin'?
It is kind of sounding AARP-ish, isn't it?
It's sunk into that.
I'm going to shut up now.
Thank you. That's good. I mean, no, don't. I love every bizarre, crazy interruption that you make. But yeah, we do end up opening prescription bottles and looking like Jesus Christ with holes in our palms.
Well,
because I'm very much, that kind of a victim mentality. I'm always, hanging on a cross, figuratively, mentally, whatever. So yeah, we'll put that aside for our offshoot podcast, Two Old People Bitching. We'll just work on that right now. It'll be the number 2, and then OL apostrophe peeps bitchin', no G apostrophe bitchin'. Two old peeps bitchin'.
We may need to flesh that out.
Okay, I know I have way too much on my mind right now, so I'm going to let that one go too. So I was pleasantly surprised and shocked that I had not heard of this case. Not surprised. Surprised, not pleasantly. What the fuck am I trying to say? I was surprised and shocked that I had not heard of this case because I had grown up in the area, but I had not. And it's it's kind of a big deal. And I am blessed that one of our tipsters called in to our voicemail hotline, the Tip-Ster Hotline, and left this request for us. Can you hit it, Producer Mark?
I will be happy to. Here it is.
Hi, Melissa. This is Mike from Cincinnati, Ohio. I was hoping you can look into the Bricca family murders. Thank you.
So the first thing I want to say is Tipster Mike has kind of a manly, sexy voice. I just want to put that out there. But it was very kind of him to call this in, kind and aggravating at the same time. It's a fascinating case and aggravating in the fact that I hate open cases. I hate open cases. I mean, I love open cases and hate them. I hate them because they're open and have not been solved. I love them because they give me so much more to think about so that I don't ever sleep at night. As this week has borne out, and I have been way, way far down the Golden State Killer rabbit hole. And on Friday evening, I believe it was, lying in bed, and my husband, who's also producer Mark, put his hand on my arm and said, "Can you turn your brain off?" And I'm thinking to myself, no.
Yeah, the answer was no.
No. I told you I would try. I did not succeed, but I told you I would try. But the events of this week has brought me some hope for the Bricca family murders, because a series of horrible attacks, rapes, robberies, and murders have been solved with DNA from 42 years ago. So even though this case is 52 years old, and things are going to be a little more difficult, because basically all we have to work with, not we, like I work on the, Hamilton County Sheriff's Department Forensics League, is fingerprints, because some of the other items that were preserved have unfortunately degraded because they weren't stored properly. There's some new sheriffs in town, so to speak, 2 new detectives who've taken over the case, and God bless them, they have the kind of optimism that is required to actually close a case like this. But going back to the beginning, Jerry, Linda, and Debbie, little Debbie, Deborah, moved to Bricca, Bricca, moved to Cincinnati in 1963. And Jerry Bricca was a chemical engineer for Monsanto. He's 28 years old. In 1966, he's 28 years old. His beautiful wife, Linda, who I pray to God her family has better pictures of her, because you can't read any article without it saying how gorgeous she is. But her wedding picture, which you would hope one looks more beautiful on their wedding day than any other, it looks like something's horribly wrong with her. Like one of her chromosomes is missing and her eyeballs go in many directions. It's not good. She has a beautiful straight nose, beautiful smile, dark hair, beautiful skin. But it's like, what the fuck's wrong with that? Somebody hit her in the head or something? She looks funny.
Well, people speak kindly of the dead.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sure the Bricca relatives are way up into podcasts, being in their 70s and 80s right now. So if you are a relative or a friend of the Bricca family, please accept my apology. But every interview and article mentions Linda's overwhelming and astounding beauty, to the point where cars would drive off of the road when they saw her. Their house at 3381 Glenwood Avenue in Bridgetown, the Green Township area of Cincinnati. And every picture I've seen of her, I'm like, I don't get, So please accept my apology, because I bet you have beautiful pictures of her. They just don't seem to have access to them and put them on any sort of informational format, because I'm like, whoa, why? There's way too much whites of her eyes. She ain't got no pupils or irises. And they go in weird directions, like really odd directions. But anyway, Jerry's very handsome. Their daughter is beautiful. Deborah is, you can look at her and see, for a 4-year-old, she came into this world like an adult. They said she used complete sentences, compound sentences. no one in the 60s would describe her as this, but I'm just going to call her a little baby Buddha. I mean, she just sounded like an incredible child. And that, of course, is because they were two wonderful parents, I'm sure. And it doesn't matter, how beautiful Linda was or how handsome Jerry was. They were brilliant, interesting people who'd done a lot in their short lives, and it was not fair that they were snuffed out. And we still don't know why. None of this is fair. I get it. Life isn't fair, but some things are much less fair than others, and this is a case that deserves to be solved. So, September 25th, a Sunday night, 1966, Jerry Bricca, who literally works 6 to 7 days a week, had worked all day at Monsanto, and he had gone to church in the morning, St. Aloysius, gone to work, and was coming home pretty late. It was like 8 o'clock. He stopped at the United Dairy Farmers to get some milk, probably for little Deborah, and was headed home to be with his wife and daughter after a long motherfucking week and probably a long motherfucking day. And he got home about 8:30, I guess, is what is recollected, simply because, how neighbors are nosy. And everyone in that neighborhood recalled how detail-oriented and compulsive they both were about keeping their house and their yard nice and tidy. And it was garbage night. The garbage would be picked up Monday morning early. So Jerry was heard taking his cans out to the sidewalk between 8 and 8:30. So that's when they assumed he got home. From everything we know, because their bodies were unfortunately not discovered until 2 days later on September 26th, late in the day, literally almost 48 hours later. So much could have happened, and the killer had so much time to have a head start before they were found. From what we can surmise from investigations and testing back in 1966, they were murdered sometime in the late evening or early morning. So sometime between 11 p.m. and 2 to 3 a.m. on Monday morning. It is also surmised that whoever was in the house spent a lot of time there, and we'll get to that information a little later. So Jerry comes home Sunday night. Everything's fine. At that time, 2 newspapers a day are delivered. The Cincinnati Enquirer, which is still around, is delivered in the morning. And the, West Side Press Journal Daily Intelligencer, I can't remember the name of it, was delivered at night. So that's another way your neighbors check up on you. Now, our newspapers are thrown at the end of the driveway. And it's like, fuck you, people, walk down there and get your fucking paper. And it's, people in a car who are flinging it, hoping they don't have to one day get Tommy John surgery because their motherfucking shoulder's all thrown out. It's not sweet, adorable boys on a bike who drove by and put it on your porch. So you didn't have to walk all the way down the end of your driveway. Back then, it was probably sweet, adorable boys on a bicycle who put it on your porch.
I used to do that. I
know.
used to be one of those sweet, adorable boys.
Well,
but the ones that we threw on the porch, those were specials. They were called porchers. We had to porch it. Usually we just flung it at the driveway too. I have to be honest.
Oh my God, you've crushed my image of you.
Yeah,
I thought you sweetly. Wait, how do you qualify as a porcher?
The homeowner asks you to porch it, and they generally give you a little bit extra money when you come and collect.
Oh my God, it's a shakedown? Shit, buddy.
Hey,
I don't even want to know.
You got to learn about business at a young age. That's why a paper route was always a great way to learn.
Oh my God.
But we digress.
You're like Al Capone.
Hey.
Literally shaking people down to put their paper on their porch?
I didn't make the rules.
Oh, dear God. And that's a great excuse to keep doing it. Holy shit, offender. Anywho, their papers, for the most part, everyone's papers were on the porch. And that's another way your, Gladys Kravitz's neighbor would know that you weren't home, you weren't paying attention, your paper's piling up. So the Monday morning paper is gone. That is actually surmised that the killer perhaps took that paper to wrap the murder weapon in and toss it in one of the many garbage cans that lined the street. Just a theory, but the Monday morning paper's gone, and they were assuredly killed before then. So either the killer was like, I need to know what's happening with the Cincinnati Reds. I'm taking the Monday morning one, and I'm getting out of here. Or he took the paper to use it to potentially hide evidence, wrap up a weapon, etc. The Monday evening weird-ass press name paper shows up. The Tuesday morning paper shows up. Meanwhile, the garbage can's sitting on the curb. The Tuesday night paper shows up, and the neighbors are like, what the fuck's going on at the Bricca house? Their garbage cans are still out. Their papers are on the fucking porch. This is bullshit. We need to have a neighborhood meeting, a neighborhood watch meeting, and somebody needs to tell them they're fucking up. They're leaving shit out, and it ain't happening. I'm calling the HOA. I don't know if there was an HOA. So the Briccas were fortunate or unfortunate to live between Dick Jensen and Dick Meyer. I would not want to live between two dicks. And look, I like dicks. I just two dicks on either side. I'm not liking that. But Dick Jensen called Monsanto and said, can I speak to Jerry Bricca? And they're like, oh, he hasn't been here in 2 days. He hasn't shown up. We don't know why. We didn't bother calling or having a welfare check. Have you checked his newspapers and his garbage cans? So
they didn't say that.
They did not say that. So Dick Meyer and Dick Jensen, the bookend neighbors Dick, the Dick squared, show up on the front porch and they knock. It's now about 10 p.m. And that was after Dick Jensen's wife said, you get your ass over there and you fucking knock on the door. I love that it's always the women. It's Gladys Kravitz. She should have just named her husband Abner. So Abner Dick Meyer opens the door. He knocks on the door first. No one answers because you know that he's very prim and proper. And then he opens the door because it's unlocked. And the second that he opens the door, he is almost taken down by a waft of the smell of decomposing flesh. And he's a World War II vet, so he knows right away what it is. He slams the door shut and calls the police. So,
well, that was very smart.
It was very smart because I got to be honest with you, even though it was very smart, the police always suspect the person that found you. He was questioned upwards of 3 times, but he was cleared. But it would be bad to find someone deceased for any reason in any way. So, and his name's Dick. I mean, for God's sake, he's got enough problems in his life. Jesus, don't let him find 3 dead people. So the police come immediately. Now, this was one of my favorite details. It's an odd detail, but I can't help it. I haven't been around a lot of homicide or natural death where this has happened. I haven't been around a lot of that at all. But it's September. It was a little bit cool, end of September. And the police show up and put a giant fan at the back of the house to push the smell out. Now, producer Mark, do you remember that time I was working at a Premier Radio Networks and I came home for dinner and the fire department had just left because you had tried to start a fire?
Boy, was that a close one.
And the flue was shut. And,
it was. I plead no contest. I'm going to give you an Albert plea. You have enough to convict me.
Alfred.
Oh, Alfred. Sorry.
Although Albert's good. I don't know who Albert is.
We'll just call this an Albert because it involved almost a fire, not a murder.
Okay. Yeah, it was funny. I came home and I'm like, hey, what's for dinner? And you were sweating and shaking. And the thing that seemed fascinating to me is that you were more worried about my response.
Oh, yeah.
Then what would happen? I'm like, you tried to start a fire and the flue was shut and the smoke filled the house and you called the fire department immediately. And what I remember is that there were 50-foot fans or something, giant fans blowing smoke from the front to the back, out the back. And the firemen were impressed with your recording studio.
Yeah, they kept they were like blowing all this. I was panicking. I was going. And by the way, the landlord lived 3 doors down. So if she had come out, I guess she was gone. If she had come out to see it, we would have been evicted.
Probably
because they set up these huge fans all throughout the house to blow the smoke out. And I'm freaking out. And there's these 2 guys sitting at the edge of my office looking at my recording studio, going, "Hey man, that looks like an old analog rig. Is that an old analog? What is that?" And I'm like, Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm trying to get the cats and make sure that they're in. Oh my God, it was
good
and
times.
worried about you coming home.
And what do you think? I love that. What do you think I would have done? Just like gone batshit and killed you in front of firemen?
No, I just didn't want you to be upset seeing all the fire trucks there and everything in front of our house. You probably would have thought I died or something. I don't know.
Okay, all right, I get you now. I just the things that stuck in my mind were the giant fans, how worried you were about my response, and the firemen were digging your recording equipment.
It was weird.
It was an odd thing. So I had no idea, and it makes perfect sense that first responders, rescue, would use a giant fan to get the smell of someone who had been deceased for 2 days and laid there. I guess what had happened was that it was a cold snap on the 25th, and then immediately on the 26th it heated up and became in the like that late Indian summer, September 26th. It became hot, and that did not do any of the Bricca family any favors as far as how their decomposition rate went. So it's an odd case because we're talking 1966. For anyone familiar with the Cincinnati area, this lovely development was built in the 50s, post-war, and right behind Western Bowl. And things like this didn't happen. The Green Township Police Department operated on a 14-hour day, meaning they didn't even need police 24 hours. I can't imagine a time like that. But as I was an infant and I lived, 20 minutes away, 25 minutes away in northern Kentucky. But all the Cincinnati news was our news too. So I didn't know about this because, again, I was too young. But it is a pretty fascinating case. So Jerry met Linda when he was working for Monsanto in Seattle. He graduated Stanford the same year as our illustrious Governor Jerry Brown with a degree in chemical engineering. And he was transferred by Monsanto, got a job immediately, transferred to Seattle. Linda was a brilliant girl who grew up in a posh area of Chicago, a bedroom community called Barrington Hills. She graduated high school 2 years early and then went into flight attendant training and was a flight attendant by the age of 18. So they met on many cross-country flights and they fell in love immediately and they got married. And when she was 19, they had Deborah Lee, beautiful girl, right away. And it was this lovely family. So in 1963, Jerry's transferred by Monsanto to Cincinnati. And he finds this lovely house on Glenwood Avenue, and they settle in. From all reports, Jerry was the more friendly, open one. And not that Linda was aloof, but she was a little more closed off, friendly, but not as open as Jerry. Theories are that they were the kids on the street. Everyone else was quite a bit older, and they were very young, accomplished couple. Plus the fact that Jerry was on an upward trajectory as a chemical engineer for Monsanto, and he would have been transferred within a few years probably. Not that they consciously didn't make a lot of friends. It may have been a subconscious thing. They just, were probably aware that they'd be moving soon. So the other people on the street, much older, the Briccas, younger. So even though Linda had been a flight attendant, after Deborah's birth, she didn't work. And then when they moved to Cincinnati, she worked part-time for a veterinarian, Dr. Fred Leininger. So remember that name. So these beautiful people who, no one can figure out a motive as to why this would happen. It turns out that they've been stabbed, which is a very personal, brutal death. If perhaps he were being offed because of his work with Monsanto, which has been a theory, they had contracts with the government, etc., probably hired killer would come in, shoot somebody in the head and get the fuck out. I don't know that they would need to shoot the whole family. The whole family was murdered and their 2 dogs were sedated. Aha!
Where did you say that the wife worked again?
Yeah, a veterinary clinic for Dr. Fred Leininger. Who would know how to sedate your dog? Yeah. So there were rumors that perhaps Linda and Dr. Leininger were doing the horizontal mambo. I don't really know that I would buy that, but what do I know? I mean, it just, the details of this case, there's part of me that is very grateful to Tipster Mike for calling, and then after digging into this case, there's part of me that wants to find Tipster Mike and push very hard and on his larynx and tell him to stop it, because this case, at the end, there's more questions than answers, and that bothers me. So I would be very happy for any tipsters who know anything, who see anything, who hear anything, to call or email us, because it's a doozy. There was a lot of suspects, a lot of theories, and it's a doozy. So Jerry is stabbed 8 times. Linda is stabbed 9 times. Beautiful Deborah is stabbed 4 times. So with such force that the knife goes all the way through her little body and pierces the bed beneath her. They are murdered in their beds. At first it was thought that Linda was the target and she was raped, but after a few days and perhaps a better coroner examination, it was just known that she had quote-unquote recent sex. She's young and married. Perhaps she and Jerry had sex. It doesn't necessarily mean she was raped. It also means they probably did not find any abrasions or,
And back then there was no DNA testing, so they couldn't show.
Exactly. And the really heartbreaking part of this, Mark, is that they collected quite a bit of evidence. Hair, saliva, semen, even though if the semen didn't belong to the killer. The items that could have belonged to the killer have become so degraded that they can't be tested. They were not stored properly. The only thing they really have to go on now are fingerprints and potential witnesses or tips. That's why, I'm asking, the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department is asking, probably the neighborhood's asking if you heard anything, knew anything, if your grandparents. I mean, if people were in their 20s or 30s, then they're in their 70s or 80s now. They could still be alive. No one thought the Golden State Killer was still alive. I thought he was because I thought he was a lot younger than he was, but he's 72 and the fucker's still kicking. So if there's somebody in their 70s or 80s who heard something, knew something, a lot of times the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department, the detective Brian Williams said, we have found that in a lot of murder cases that neighbors and witnesses actually see the murderer walking down the street. They think there's something weird and odd, but they, don't want to get involved or don't think that it's strange until later on they're like, oh, that's the guy that killed my neighbor and I saw him and he was wearing a red jacket. So there's a lot of neighborhood lore. One man who wrote a beautiful write-up online said that his grandfather told him the dogs had been murdered also. And the dogs were not murdered. They were sedated. That's another theory as to why no one really checked on them until 2 days later. They had been sedated for quite a while. By day 2, by Tuesday morning, they were barking their heads off. And apparently, according to everyone, they were big barkers. So they would have barked the entire time or, someone would have noticed before. They were sedated. So they, woke back up on Tuesday like, hey, where's my bone? Why am I in the bedroom? Let me out. I'm going to shit on the rug. Something like that. I don't know what goes through a dog's mind. So a hired hit would have probably been quicker, and there's no real theory as to why. Of course, a hired hit would also be buried. If we may not know a reason why. I don't know. I can't imagine Monsanto is like, let's kill Jerry. I don't know. There's theories of a mafia hit. There's absolutely no connection to anyone in the family with the mafia, but it's still so troubling and confusing. No one knows. So there were so many odd, strange connections in this case that the original investigators actually traveled across the country, many different places, to try and find connections. They actually really didn't bear out. But some of the theories were it was a pilot, because Linda had been a flight attendant, and there were 2 flight attendants who were murdered in Seattle. Sorry, 2 roommates. One was murdered, one survived. Lonnie Trumbull and her roommate Lisa Wick were attacked, and they were still flight attendants, and they knew Linda. This was a month before Linda's murder. Now, she had mentioned to neighbors, oh my gosh, I knew a flight attendant who was murdered. She actually told the woman a few doors down who regularly watched Deborah for her to not let Debbie out in the yard by herself. I think she was afraid someone would come by and nab her. I don't know why she would have thought the connection between those flight attendants could lead back to her, but it's sort of fascinating. So it sort of is thought that those 2 women in Seattle, Lisa Wick and Lonnie Trumbull, were victims of Ted Bundy. Now, Lisa Wick survived, and she to this day still thinks it's Ted Bundy, even though he went to, his death saying he didn't do it. But Lonnie Trumbull was murdered. Lisa Wick was beaten so badly that she was in a coma for a month, and she has absolutely no recollection of the attack. So it could have been Ted Bundy, or it could have been, Bob the plumber, or it could have been no one at all. We don't know who it could have been, but she to this day says it's Ted Bundy. So then there's a theory that, a hitman would have done it. I don't know why a hitman would have been around, except that Linda offhandedly mentioned she had been recruited to help bring down some drug lords when she was a flight attendant, that she had been kind of working undercover. I do not know for what agency. I do not know that she ever explained what agency she was working for or how she worked undercover for United Airlines. Like, I'm going to have to check your bag, sir. There's white powder all over it and your nose is bleeding. I mean, I don't know how, she would have been involved. The other theory, one of the other theories, is that she was murdered by the same person who murdered Valerie Percy. Now, this is another case that hasn't been solved. It's very strange, and the lead detectives flew to Chicago to see if there was a connection. So Valerie Percy was the daughter of a Senate candidate, Charles Percy, in Chicago. He later won his election in November. I'm thinking he used his daughter's death to win his election. What do you think?
A politician doing something so crass? I can't believe it.
I'm a horrible person. I'm sure he didn't. But I did find it interesting that it was brought. It's like, he won his election. Okay. Great. He and his wife, Valerie's stepmother, were home at the time. She's 21. She's in her bed, and someone breaks in. Her stepmother, they live on the North Shore in a mansion. And this is 3 weeks before the Bricca murders. Her stepmother hears some commotion and then moaning. She gets up and she kind of traces the sound to Valerie's room. She sees a man in silhouette. He shined flashlights in her eyes, and she runs back into her bedroom. I'm sorry. And wakes up her husband. There's a man in your daughter's bedroom, and he shined a flashlight in my eyes. I'm going back to sleep. You should probably do something about that. So he calls the police immediately, and by the time they get to Valerie's room, she's already dead. So she's dead in her bed. The original investigator for the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department, Lieutenant Vogel, went to Chicago and talked to the police there, the survivors. I mean, and he couldn't make a connection, but he was willing to give it a shot. He was willing to give every single thing a shot.
Was Miss Percy also stabbed?
Yes.
And the stewardesses in Seattle, they were stabbed?
Beaten and stabbed.
Beaten and stabbed.
Mm-hmm.
And both of these murders took place before the Bricca murders.
Mm-hmm. They were within a short period of time of each other.
And Linda had expressed concerns about her safety.
Yes. Now, Valerie was not a flight attendant. Valerie Percy was a student and the daughter of Charles Percy. The other two women were flight attendants and knew Linda. I don't know that they were like best buddies, but they were flight attendants at the same time. That's why perhaps a pilot who could fly across the country, who had access to fly across the country, could have done it. Could be a pilot serial killer. It could be a guy with a really good car and he likes road trips.
Yeah.
Mark Humphreys.
So, I guess I'm just, whatever happened to Dr. Fred?
And Dr. Fred Leininger?
Yeah.
Such a great question, Producer Mark. I was heading in that direction.
Just trying to piece all the,
I know. It's for such a beautiful small town and a lovely young family. You're like, what the fuck is happening? So Dr. Leininger is sort of blessed to have been questioned not a long time. At the time that it was about 3 months earlier, the Miranda rights had come into play from the Supreme Court.
Oh, the Miranda decision, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
3 months before, the Supreme Court brought down the Miranda decision, which reinforced protections for those under police interrogation. So the police, of course, have nothing great to say about Dr. Leininger. They were like, he talked to us for 10 minutes, and then we did a 40-minute taped interview, and then he told us to go fuck the fuck off and talk to his attorney, Perry Mason. He lawyered up, which is probably one of the first times in the known universe that in 1966 someone said he lawyered up. This wasn't, 1985 episode of Law and Order. This is a 1966 triple homicide. And Dr. Leininger lawyered up. Now, in a small town, and it was smaller then, there are rumors and rumors of rumors. And the rumors were that Linda and Dr. Leininger were having an affair, that they had been seen walking on walking paths, holding hands. They had been seen parked in lovers' lanes. I just feel awful. I mean, I should feel much worse about talking about Linda Bricca saying her pictures make her look like Corky from Life Goes On. But
by the way, I looked up a picture of her, and you're right.
Thank you. There's got to be better pictures of her because I've never seen anyone who has more white than iris or pupil, and why they go in like Marvin the Martian opposite directions. I don't. But every interview or article you read, it's like, Linda was a beauty, such a beauty. Cars drove off the road. If she was out doing work in the yard, I'm like, was she wearing sunglasses? Because I mean, I'm not going to call her a butterface, but I'm going to call her a butter eyes because she looks crazy. And Jerry's very handsome and their daughter is beautiful. And I'm sure she's beautiful, but she needs better pictures. She needs a better press agent because her picture would make her look crazy and weird and deformed. It's not good. So Dr. Leininger was rumored to have been having an affair with his part-time veterinary clinic worker, Linda Bricca. I really don't know that I believe that to be true. The theories are that Jerry was the target. The theories are that Linda was the target. Obviously, no one thinks little Deborah was the target, even though I think she was an old soul who was very intelligent. She wasn't old enough to have, joined the mafia or been involved in something nefarious that would have caused her to be targeted. I really just don't believe that. So Dr. Leininger lawyered up immediately. It didn't put a dent in his business. I guess a lot of people have sick animals. And he thrived until 1995 and he retired. He and his wife moved to Florida. As everyone in Cincinnati seems to, it's like Florida is Valhalla. I don't get it. So much humidity and bugs and shit. I don't know why you people, I know, off topic, but my grandfather had a small 2-bedroom bungalow in Pensacola, which I believe is called the Hillbilly Riviera. And when I was, a very young child, so we would go every, spring, fall down to Florida to his wonderful little bungalow until the year that the vinyl top of his Catalina melted down the side of the car. And there was no air conditioning in, 1970. And he drove back not in a good mood, and he sold the bungalow. And I really have no interest in going back to Florida. I'm so sorry, Florida tipsters, but in the wise words of Patton Oswalt, Florida is where bad things go to happen. It just is. So Mr. and Mrs. Leininger, Dr. and Mrs. Leininger, retire to Florida, and in 2004 they have a suicide pact, and they both off themselves in a assisted living place that they were living out their dotage.
Oh, how romantic.
Yeah, I wonder if he used like the same, like, you think he just like, hey, sweetheart, I lined up a row of ketamine for you. It'll be just like the old days when we went partying, or you'll die. Or do you think he like sedated them both like he did the dogs? Oops, I'm sorry. How he allegedly maybe sedated the dogs.
This whole thing is very strange.
I know. It's very layered, and it's so heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking. And I just want something to come back, to make it solvable, to get some justice for these people. That I don't care what they did. I don't care if she had an affair. I kind of doubt that, Jerry was working on something. He's a chemical engineer for Monsanto. I don't think he's working on, a bomb. I guess I don't know. But it is heartbreaking. And the Hamilton County detectives interviewed 300 people, and in different cities, like I said, across the country. No one's ever been arrested. It's not a robbery because there was some money missing out of Jerry's wallet, and his wallet was found in the backyard. They don't know how much he had on him. Would you stab 3 people and sedate 2 large dogs and put them in another bedroom for somebody's folding money in their wallet?
No, this is the thing that makes it weird. The dogs being sedated was weird.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was Dr. Fred, I guess that would make sense that he could do that. And it seems strange to me that he wasn't prosecuted. I guess he lawyered up and they never got enough information from him.
Never talked again.
But they were bound, right? Both of the victims, or all 3 of them.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, they were all 3 bound. However, the killer removed the bindings before he left. Here's the theory on why he spent a lot of time there. And it could just be what producer Mark is saying, could be the other half. He spent a lot of time cleaning up. I don't really know why. Or he spent a lot of time, because they were bound, trying to get information out of them.
See, that's what's weird.
It is odd. And while Jerry was stabbed 8 times and Linda stabbed 9 times in the chest, which would, automatically be, for lack of a better term, a kill shot. It's a kill stab. There were small cuts all over her face. So that could be someone trying to torture her to get information out of her. It could be the drug cartel. I don't know what she would have known as a flight attendant for United, except more peanuts, sir. I don't understand. I don't understand anything, obviously. I don't think she was so tied into a drug ring. And that had been years before. Deborah was 4, and they'd lived in Cincy for 3 years, and she wasn't a flight attendant after she left Seattle. So as I said, God damn you, Tip-Ster Mike. It really does bring more questions forward than answers, and it is such a heartbreaking case, and to not be solved is the biggest heartbreak. And you're right, producer Mark. Dr. Leininger, after he lawyered up, would submit no samples. They had over 300 suspects all over the country, and everyone else gave them hair, saliva, blood, and he was the only one that didn't.
Yeah.
That's why the detectives are fairly focused that there's just one suspect.
Yep.
And he's gone, and he ended his own life. So this quote from Detective Todd and Detective Williams, who have inherited this case from their previous co-workers, it's, such a long case. said that they really feel there's a box of evidence and files, and they feel like the answer is there. And Detective Brian Williams says, we have desks across from each other, and we'll bring up the Bricca case, and then 45 minutes we're still talking about it. And Detective Todd said, and an hour later, we're diving back into the folders. We're revisiting an interview or two, because that's what you have to do. And that, my beautiful tipsters, is what we have to do. And if you know anything, if you heard anything, if you saw anything, a rumor, a grandparent, anything, please call us. Please email us. Please call the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department. And more cowbell.
If you've got any information on the Bricca family murders or any other tip, call us at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. Or send us an email to jttipsters@gmail.com.